Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Manager. Here we chat to FPL managers who have an interesting story to tell or who are offering new and different insight into the game. Today I'm joined by Emma, aka Jump the Wave on Twitter. So in the days before deadline each week, she canvasses a raft of views from fans, the likes of Manchester City and Chelsea, as well as experts like our very own Luke, to try and predict their lineups each week. Her research has become a staple part of FPL Manager's weekly information gathering. Emma, welcome. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sparing some time to chat with us. And as I said, it's your work has become a sort of a staple part of how we make our decisions, and in particular around rotation. And there's a familiar phrase of Pep roulette, but Manchester City have been quite steady this year, but it's been Chelsea that have been where we've been having to get our thinking caps on as to who is going to start. So before we sort of have a look at your research and go into that, I just want a bit of background about you, really. So how did this come about? I mean, do you have a background analysing data, and how does this work?
I started being really interested in data after studying economics, and then left it for a few years. But I've always been interested in numbers, and that happened to coincide with a very recent and sudden interest in football. Okay. Largely because my children invited me to join a family fantasy football league, and I didn't know enough players to actually create a team. So they kind of helped me, and then in the first results of the first couple of weeks, it was clear that I'd been stitched up by them and was invited to be the loser. And so I thought I would kind of, get even, because my husband was laughing quite a lot at that. And so I very quietly started to study football analytics. And so that's where I am. So I spent every time they went out to go and play football, I would be at home reading up articles on football tactics and trying to understand.
So you didn't have any, I guess, knowledge or interest in football before this?
No, not at all. Because having three boys, football is actually quite difficult sometimes, because they all get very upset when their team loses, and the house would become fractious. And mostly I thought it was rather a waste of time, and I've always been a rugby watcher, really. And now I'm completely hooked on football. And love it even more than rugby, dare I say.
So who are their teams? And
well, they support Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
So not a good place at the moment, but it's all good. And my husband, I met him on the first day of university, and the only possession he came into our relationship with was a Chelsea bath mat from a very long time ago. Okay. So I guess long-time fans, you can't choose your team necessarily, can you?
Okay.
Change it.
Okay, so let's have a look at this research. This is what it looks like. So this, for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's a big blue and red sheet image. But if we look really carefully in that, we can see little things at the bottom. So you've got, say, for example, Aymeric Laporte, 100%. Bernardo Silva, 100%. Gundogan, 0%. And Cancelo, 60%. Now, this was going into the Manchester City Palace match. And so tell me what we're looking at here. Who's involved in creating these numbers here, and what do these numbers mean?
Yeah, so we have a really brilliant sort of collection of predictors who every week submit their thoughts about who could play. And I think it's quite interesting, because I could just produce a percentage chance based on the collective kind of hive mind thinking. But actually, I think seeing how different people view the likely team output is actually more interesting. It's a much more nuanced approach, and it allows you to see the team structure a little bit more, and how people who think that Gundogan might start are also thinking that the front three might be slightly different to those who think that Silva is going to place, and who are they going to play in there. They've got a number of people who effectively play as number 10s in there, but they don't often have a kind of true number nine, a focal point, and I
Yeah.
think so. I think that's what I wanted to do, was just present other people's thoughts. They're a lot of them are season ticket holders or Man City or Chelsea obsessives, and I just think it was quite an interesting thing that Jamie, who's Wee Rogue on Twitter, really set up the whole sheet after there was a conversation in one of the kind of private chat groups I'm in about what was happening with Pep, and was there a way of predicting it? And so there are various people who I track their predictions for, some journalists I'm in touch with, and some people who aren't on Twitter, and then there's a crew of brilliant people on Twitter who all play FPL, who really understand how important it is for us to have their predictions before the deadlines.
So how many people, for example, in this particular sheet here, Man City prediction here for going into the Palace game, how many people would be involved in this then?
I have about 50 on the
Wow.
in the group, and not all of them manage to predict by the deadline every week. Everybody has busy lives, and people are sometimes away or on holiday or just forget. But at the same time, what I was concerned about is getting the accuracy of their predictions right, because over the course of the season, I'm tracking every individual predictor and how accurate they are, and whether they make any kind of fundamental mistakes, like do they slip up on somebody's injured and they haven't picked up on that news, because that then means I flag them to so that I can monitor, who's being really thorough. And then at the very bottom lines are our skill weighting. So what happens is if somebody is really consistently good at predicting, I'm giving them a higher weighting to their answers than somebody who is less consistent.
Wow.
So
this
is very boring, isn't it? But
no,
I get
it's
very
not. It's not, because this is. It's fascinating to hear about what's behind this as well, because I see this and it's nice and easy for me to see, Cancelo, he's ill, so he might not start, but he could do, and see who will start. But finding out those, now I know Luke has been very successful, and he's one of the people that contributes to this, I believe.
He does. He's great, and he really understands the tactical analysis that I think is very in line with what I'm thinking each week, as I'm trying to also do my own prediction, and so we've had some really good conversations, and it's trying to do that, and I think that the hive mind result of lots of people who are thinking about City and what team they are going to produce, I think gives us a level of certainty. It's running at about 9.6, 9.7 out of 11 players. So there's generally one player who surprises us each week. And then what I'm hoping to do is the best of those people will be weighted more heavily next season, so that then it will be easier to see what the best predictors are thinking, versus the people who are pretty good predictors but not quite as good as those who are the best.
Right, yeah. I know there's something Luke has mentioned around left-footed and right-footing players, and something that Pep Guardiola likes to have a nice blend and mix there. So if we've got a left-footed player there, you can't have a right-footed player there, and so on. And that has helped him, I know, to predict the forward line. And I know he's been quite a champion of Foden starting whenever he is fit and not on a naughty step. So looking at the actual lineup, this is completely bang on, and the only difference there in terms of the 60% is Cancelo, and that was based on his illness. So if he wasn't ill, he'll start, and if he was ill, obviously he wouldn't. So he'd recovered from that. But the rest of them, the likes of Laporte, Walker, Foden, obviously, and Rodri, and so on, all bang on. But looking at Chelsea this season, so I'm not going to put it up on the screen because this is more of a sort of snapshot of that. But Chelsea have been, your family team, they've been a bit trickier. The manager is more known for rotating, and it's so difficult to predict. I find it difficult. So what challenges or successes have you had in trying to predict the Chelsea lineup?
I think that the team that do the Chelsea lineup have a really difficult job this season. I think there's been lots of uncertainty. There's been injuries. There's been issues with Lukaku, and now there's the ownership kind of swelling around, and I think it makes it very difficult to predict the team. And sometimes the poor predictors are pulling out their hair, saying, "I really don't feel very certain about our predictions." And that's one of the things that I'm considering whether I could introduce a level of confidence into predictions, because that's often quite interesting as well. Is you could be certain that that Rudiger is going to start, and you're going to predict that James is going to start, but you're much less certain, and whether that could be built into the model. But the models are already 45 plus page spreadsheets, all interlinked, and are pretty complex, particularly with the skill weighting involved. So it's also got to stay manageable, because I often find that I'm trying to deal with updated predictions as the deadline approaches, and I need to be able to get to my own team.
Yeah, so I mean that the Chelsea one is particularly difficult because, as you mentioned Lukaku as well, but there's also the likes of James, there's Azpilicueta, Thiago Silva, and then you get to, and then I haven't even got to the midfield, and it's right across the pitch, and even the goalkeeper. I'm not 100%. I meant Mendy. I would, but I'm not. I wouldn't 100% say he will start every game, because sometimes he doesn't. And so it's right across the board. There is that threat of rotation, particularly in midfield there. Is it just City and Chelsea you do at the moment? Are there plans to expand this into other teams as well, perhaps all 20 teams?
Well, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I'd need some help to do that. And people in the FPL community were really great earlier this year in helping me find really dedicated predictors to do, because I need every predictor to do every week, really. Otherwise, I can't track how accurate their predictions are if people keep changing, or only predict easy weeks and not the difficult weeks. So there's quite a lot of thinking about the data to do. I would love to do more teams. I need people to volunteer to organise them, because there's quite a lot of chatting to people. We have private Twitter groups, both the Man City and the Chelsea teams, and checking that they've submitted the right number of people. It's very easy to make a mistake actually on the form that we use, and reminding them and double checking post the press conference that all the data that you're getting makes sense, and that isn't somebody who's ill who is predicted to start by a couple of teams who submitted just before the press conference, and might not have seen it at that point in time. So there's quite a lot of coordination. But yeah, if anybody's interested, I'd love to do some more teams, but I definitely need some help in kind of coordinating the groups. Well,
I'm sure you'll get responses to that, because I know every year especially on Twitter, the FPL community just becomes, the quality just increases. It's not just the quantity. It's just for example, us chatting here, the quality of the research and the dedication and work that goes into it. It just accelerates each year, so I'm sure you will. So
which team would you like to see predicted then?
Okay, well, I know which teams I wouldn't, so it would be a process of elimination. So, for example, this season, Arsenal, I wouldn't, because you can pretty much guarantee them. I'm not sure many people would be interested, but my team Brighton would be the challenge for you, because Graham Potter. I mean, the goalkeeper I would say is 100%, but other than that, I literally would not know. You never know. Not anyone else is 100%. There's some that are pretty near, but they are a tough one. But I guess it's the teams that we're interested in terms of. We'll come to a minute in sort of your thinking of the game weeks remaining, but it's exactly the teams you've got: City and Chelsea. It's the teams that are doing well. Liverpool, for example, they're pretty rotation free-ish at the moment. But yeah, predicting whether Mo Salah is going to actually start. That was actually big news this week, the week that's just gone past, game week 29.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
So for me, I think it would be those sorts of things. But it's, I mean, yeah, it's the teams where there is a lot of rotation, and that's changed year to year. Arsenal used to be hard to predict. Really hard, and now they're just absolutely easy. you know their 11 if they're all well.
Yeah, it's a bit variable, isn't it? And I wonder whether longer term, one of the things I'm thinking about is that some of the Man City defenders have actually been quite cheap this year. So, for example, Laporte and Stones. And you could take their record, and I'm wondering whether actually it's worth looking at having them as a rotating pair, and that you'll get one of them playing, and often you'll get two of them playing because Diaz is being rotated as well at the moment, and he's off injured. So that could be quite an economic way of having very good defence if you can cope with a rotating strategy. Whereas some of the more highly priced defenders, it makes it very difficult if you to have two of those. So
I guess
that's an interesting. I think that, and I wonder whether that's a little bit what happens with Man City's midfield. They're cheaper in price, some of them, because you don't know who's going to play, and FPL build that in a little bit.
Definitely. I also think when it's where the team are in their standing in terms of whether they're in Europe or not. So that's an added threat to rotation is Europe. So I mean, to what extent with Man City and Chelsea is Europe built into the thinking of some of the team that whose views go into this?
I think it's going to be difficult to predict Man City and Chelsea later in the season if they start to progress in the Champions League. There seems to be a balance between Pep plays even when they have clearly won, and he could be using some of the youngsters. There's quite a lot of discussion about the fact that he still puts out a full team, and we don't quite know whether he continues to play his first team just to keep them at peak fitness. I imagine that he's got the sports science team saying, well, this player will need 70, 80 minutes just to keep him in peak condition. So I think, it's going to be interesting. I did do a breakdown last season of how the accuracy of the predictions varied through the year, and it was around the Champions League where occasionally there were times when predictions were well off, and that certainly happened on one occasion this season where they were they'd already won the tie through at Leipzig, I think, and then everybody expected them to play all the youngsters in the Champions Leagues because there was no way they were going to do anything other than win. And he put out a full team. So some of the predictions that I get are actually not related just to the Premier League, and everybody was well off that week.
Yeah, he is a good example. I mean, although the team has been relatively settled. So, for example, the Palace game, which is this was predicting, he didn't make any substitutions, and they needed to, arguably, to win it, and they didn't. So it's unpredictable there.
Yes, and the forums were alive this week that Sterling or Jesus should have been given a chance there. Though Pep did say that it was about the kind of high energy of the group, didn't he? The high rhythm that they were in. But I think there's real questions about what's going to happen to some of the City players if they're talking about Haaland and Alvarez coming to them. I mean, I think that Delap could be a really interesting striker for a team. If he moves and could be quite cheap. I can't see Sterling staying if he doesn't get more game time. So I think that there could be some interesting changes, and it will be if those players stay within the Premier League, then that will be interesting to see what happens.
Okay, let's have a look at your career history, because as you said, it's relatively new to it, and I've also put up your chips so far this season. So you're on the edge of the top 50,000, so it's going well this season. So in your 3 seasons that you've been playing, 2018, 19, just outside the top. So this is the first season just outside the top 100k. So that's not bad. And then the second season just outside the top 2k, and then just outside the top 30k. So these are all good ranks there in just 3 seasons, particularly second season getting 3,000. So when you first started doing this, obviously your background is in looking at data and statistics and the economics side of life, but but and then sort of transmuting that to this. It's it seems to have been quite effective. How was it when you first started playing, and what was it in the second season that got you into the top 3K?
Well, the first season I had just a disastrous start because I didn't know what I was doing, and I blew some chips and didn't know anything really about the players until about Christmas. But then by then I started to pick up on really good analytic conversation within Twitter. Second season, I think it's a good start. Helps an awful lot, particularly if you look at your kind of psychological risk profile. And I'm somebody who very naturally is a high risk taker. I love any adrenaline fueled sports, and I surf and I ski and kayak, and just love the thrill of jumping off cliffs and things. So that makes it really hard for me to play FPL well, because I'm just so inclined to take risks all the time. And that first season, I decided I would play really cautiously. The second season, I played really cautiously, and that was much more effective. And this season, I had a very wobbly start because I left things too late to the deadline. And then I've been taking more risks than I should have done. And actually, what I do is I often track the safe move I would have made. I've got a little kind of model going which tracks the safe move I would have made in any 1 week versus the move that I've made because I fancy it. Based on data, of course, I can tell you the safe move wins just about every time.
Good. Music's to my ears.
Sobering lesson, really.
Yes. So I was just thinking how we move sort of your research into data, into rotation rather, into these sorts of decisions. So, for example, here's one I made. I free hitted, I think same time as you, game week 27, I think it was. I took a free hit then. I looked at the players, who's good. I think Man City had a particularly good fixture. I got in Mahrez. Didn't play or didn't do well. So I got that wrong. How have you used the information that you've got, all the experts you're speaking to about rotation, to ensure that you're, say, on the edge of the top 50k and I'm about 90k? So there's clearly that difference, and it helps.
Well, it's so hard, isn't it? Because that week, was it 28? And I had Foden, Laporte and Cancelo in my team. And there was real concern that Laporte and Foden wouldn't play. But you know what? In my own prediction, I believed that they would play. And then I had a crisis of confidence and thought, no, I what do I know? I didn't back my own research and analytics. And I did a last minute free hit and brought in Mahrez, who didn't play. And Foden played and scored the goal.
Yes.
And so it's really hard, isn't it?
So you were right, though.
Data, and I was right.
Yeah.
And I even when I did press my free hit button, I was telling myself that I should just trust my own analysis of the data that said there was every tactical reason why Foden was going to start.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
That's really interesting as well, because so many people say, I wish I trust my judgment, and then, they get distracted by something, they read something, they see something, and they change their mind, and they wish they'd gone back to that original thought. Perhaps that original decision at the beginning of the week, or in your case, based on the data. So I guess that's a lesson that you've come to is do trust the data. If they predict Foden to start, chances are he will.
Well, it's going to sometimes go wrong, but it's also don't trust Pep. That's the problem, particularly if people have been out night clubbing or whatever. Yeah. He definitely can throw a spoke in the works and have a good bench. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that I am taking from this year is actually it's much more comfortable having a really solid first bench player, because then you're able to not be too worried about somebody being rotated out, as long as they don't come on for a lovely one-pointer. Yeah,
definitely. So let's have a look at your look at those chips there. So the 26, 27, 28 strategy has been great. So you've got a free hit and a bench boost left. And when are you thinking of playing them and why?
Okay, so I think I'm probably going to aim for bench boosting in 36. Though I could end up doing it in 33 if that looks better. And then I'm going to use my free hit on 33 or 36.
Okay.
Unless something else kind of crops up that looks interesting.
Okay.
So I'm kind of happy to play my bench boost whenever it happens. I'll just have a look each week. I almost played it this week, but the fact I didn't know whether Cancelo was going to start or not.
Okay.
And I also had an uncertainty about Roger. So I'm leave things till I have a plan. I've got the rest of the season mapped out on a spreadsheet. You won't be surprised to know. But at the same time, I'm going to stay quite flexible. And I haven't really. I'm just thinking about if I make a transfer this week or whether I just go out with eight players.
So, I mean, handily, Chelsea and City are going to be key to those decisions. So I've got something I'll put up on the screen here. This is a look at the fixtures. And this is based on... So we are recording this on Friday, just before the Game Week 30 deadline. This being published just after the Game Week 30 deadline, just to timestamp this. So we're looking ahead to Game Week 31 and beyond. But at the same time, we're talking about Game Week 33 and 36. Keep up, everyone. And the FA Cup results, which take place this weekend, will decide where some of the doubles will go. And City and Chelsea are quite key to that. So if FA Cup results don't go their way, City and Chelsea could indeed have a double game week of Chelsea, Leicester and Arsenal. And Manchester City could play Wolves and Brighton, which would be great. So Game Week 33, this is where your research will be steaming.
It's such pressure.
But Game Week 36 could be where their doubles fall if they don't in Game Week 33. So in which case, once again, steaming again. But as you've said, if you have been trusting the research from everyone, and if you had, you would have done better that particular week, Game Week 27. So it sounds like whatever happens 33, 36, you're not going to make those last minute changes and get Mahrez in and etc. Unless you think he's going to start.
I might. I've only got Cancelo in my team at the moment, and if I thought that something could be predicted, it's this game is meant to be fun, and that's where I think it's really difficult to play FPL in the way that I would like to play it in. And get a lot of fun out of it if you're actually making beautifully optimized decisions that don't actually allow you to have that much kind of a gamble or if I'm going to watch a football match and I really want to have a player in it, I might bring somebody in that actually pure logic would say it wasn't worth the transfer. It's hard, isn't it? But you have to have fun and play the game for enjoyment, I think.
Definitely, and I look back on the seasons I've played, and some I've really enjoyed, irrespective of where I've ended up at the end of the season. And same thing, I could have had a really high rank or a really low rank, and some seasons I just have not enjoyed because of various things like COVID and just adding to that threat of rotation. And it is so frustrating when you bring in players or captain them and they don't turn up and deliver. But let's have a look at your once again, this is an unusual one because this is your bus team going into Game Week 33. Bus team as in if the unfortunate thing happened with ourselves and a bus, we create a team so that it's there in place while we're lying in hospital recovering. And so this is going into Game Week 33. So this is sort of a snapshot of your thinking. And you've got Ramsdale, Davis, Kulusevski, Martinelli, Saka, Ramsey, Kane captain, Jimenez vice captain, and so you're going into that with around about 8 players, and you've got the likes of Cancelo, Salah, Alexander-Arnold, Rudiger, Robertson are not playing. So how this is a slightly unusual week, but how does this fit in with your theories of rotation, data, and indeed attitudes to risk?
So I sold James for Robertson last week. and I don't really want to get rid of Robertson this week because I want to play him next week.
Yep.
So I've got a dilemma because I don't have any money in the bank, or 0.1, and I could have done Roger to Huang, but there's not many other moves that I can do that will really add any expected value or EV. And I look at the point distribution of players because I favour players with a longer tail distribution shape, which means that they're more likely to score a large number of points. I think in the season I did particularly well. You know, I brought in Barnes when a lot of people brought in another Leicester player, and Barnes got a hat trick.
Yeah.
So you know, that can be, for me, that adds that kind of potential relative variance, adds enjoyment.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do this week, because other than I'd like to get James in for Rudiger, because that will be fun.
Yeah.
But that's really needs to wait till we have news of his injury.
Okay.
So I may just run with 8, or I may do something boring that just gets me a point. I don't really want to transfer out Salah for somebody like Coutinho or somebody, because then that uses another transfer, bringing him back in.
So looking ahead to, we know that the Burnley and Everton double in game week 31. I'm probably gonna just totally shun them. But would you be the same in just the way your thinking is?
Yes, I think my free hit with 3 Burnley players worked out well. So so I think that it might make sense. It might make sense to get one of them, but I don't think I'll be bringing in more than one.
No.
And I think it will really depend on, once we see the sorry, there's a helicopter just flying past my house. You might, I presume you'll cut this out.
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
No, it's fine. I can't hear it, so it's fine.
Oh, fine. Okay, it's very loud for me. So this week I think that I'm just trying to think. What was your question again? I've lost track. It was an
I was just looking ahead for game week 31 and Everton and Burnley, and sort of maybe not investing into them, but then also looking ahead as well, really. So we're looking at who are your targets? Which players are you targeting? I know it's going to depend a lot on cup results and your own research each week. But who's in your thoughts for the remainder of the season that you think you're going to have at some point?
I think this is feeling like quite a nice time, actually, because we've got the cup games over the weekend, and then we have a bit of a break, and we then, or I will certainly go to my spreadsheet and map out the rest of the season with my transfers that I have in mind, and I think that will just naturally show a path where it will indicate whether Southampton are playing, who has the doubles, who's not, and then I will start to look at what chips I'm using when, and then that will determine my transfers.
Excellent.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I get a lot of pleasure out of that beautifully laid out spreadsheet and planning. So I think sometimes I feel how people I'm quite interested in how people approach data in the FPL community, because I see quite a lot of people who kind of misuse data, really, and they decide their opinion and then they find the data to back it. And I really like people who have a lot of care and precision in their methodology. I really like FPL Chase has been doing some really interesting modelling. Simon and Jamie do the uncertainty corridor of uncertainty podcast every now and then. That's quite interesting if you're into analytical kind of approach. And in particular, I like people who are more interested in getting the methodology right than they are about the result. Okay. So I never care who's predicted to start for the Man City lineup. What I care about is how accurate we've managed to make any 1 week. And I think that's the sort of data that I find really exciting, because I think it allows you to make really balanced decisions. I can't wait till next season when
Yeah.
I'm going to get all the skill weighting from our current predictors, and that, I'm very curious about whether that will make them, how much
Wow.
more efficient that will make them. Yeah.
Wow, excellent. I mean, it's the way it's sort of ended there is about it's a nice lead on from our previous Meet the Manager interview, which was with Daniel Whitaker, who was carrying out as part of his masters in the library studies around how the community, like people like yourselves, are using data, and about how it's becoming more sophisticated. And he believes that the FPL community and people like yourselves is actually the future of how all walks of life analyze and use data to make their decisions. So he thinks that we're taking over the world. So there's something there's something to chew on. But Emma, thanks so much for joining me. It's been really fascinating, especially how you've sort of come into this and used data and analytics to show that you can do really well in a season. Not just a season, several seasons. So your 3 seasons have all been good ranks, and one is top 3K. So just before we
Well,
go,
thank you for inviting me, and anybody who's interested in joining or starting a predictor group or joining one of our existing ones, just DM me on Twitter at Jump the Wave, and I'll be delighted to talk to you, because it's quite fun within the chats,
Yeah.
hearing people discuss the intricacies of
Yeah.
the games.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining me. Good luck with the game week. Good luck with the rest of the season, and good luck with
Good luck
next
to you
season.
too.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Bye.